Howdy folks, I'm JC from One Shot Adventures, and today I'm going to give you an overview of what's probably my most played adventure I've ever written, the Old West horror adventure, The Black Mine of Teihiihan, which you can get for free at oneshotadventures.com with versions available for GURPS and Call of Cthulhu, though it's pretty easy to port to other game systems too. There's something that I find particularly satisfying about Old West horror. First, life is cheap in the Old West. You're always just one mistake away from a grisly end, and that's perfect for horror. Also, I like how in the Wild West, towns are always very small and they're really spread out with long distances between them. So the players are very much on their own. There's no calling in the authorities when you see something unnatural in the Old West. There's also just a lot of opportunity for weirdness in the Old West. Long stretches of empty territory, the harshness of nature, and how myths of both Native Americans and Europeans can combine into something special. It just makes for a great setting for players to explore. All of that danger and weirdness is captured in the Black Mine of Teihiihan. And this adventure actually has a funny origin story because several years ago, my brother and I went to Origins and we signed up for a Call of Cthulhu Old West adventure, and I was so excited to play it. It promised danger and mystery and Lovecraftian weirdness. And when we got to the table, the GM hadn't read the scenario ahead of time. The players were quickly confused and bored. There was literally somebody sleeping at the table. And we only got about a quarter of the way through the adventure. That night was true cosmic horror. I went home and I was still so angry about how poorly that adventure had run that I decided to write my own Old West horror adventure that would make up for the sins of that late night at Origins, and that became The Black Mine of Teihiihan, which was the very first adventure that I published for free at oneshotadventures.com. That's how the whole website got started. In the Black Mine of Teihiihan, the PCs are unexpectedly stranded in the wilderness and find themselves embroiled in a family feud that's turned downright weird. And worse, they're also on the run from a pack of hungry spirits that hate the living. If you're a fan of survival horror, body swapping, and old mythology, you're going to want to keep watching this overview. But be warned, there are some serious spoilers ahead. So if you want to play in this adventure, well, holster your 6-shooter and back off slowly, because not only am I going to give you a complete overview, I'm going to give you GM some tips on how to run this adventure like a sheriff. Okay, now that all you players are scared off, come along and let's explore the Black Mine of Teihiihan. The Black Mine of Teihiihan is an adventure for 3 to 6 players, although like most horror adventures, I think it works a little better when the group's a little bit smaller. I've run this adventure many times at game conventions, and it always manages to fit into a single 4-hour session, although like all RPGs, your group may vary. The adventure includes pre-generated characters, handouts, and maps, so you can run this one without a lot of prep. I've used it at conventions as an introductory adventure for new role players since it doesn't really require a lot of deep system knowledge of either Call of Cthulhu or GURPS, whichever system you're picking, and you can have a good time with it. The Black Mine of Teihiihan begins with all the players on a small passenger train heading south from Kansas City to Arkansas City. The player characters are all strangers, each with their own reason for leaving town. And like a lot of horror adventures, the PCs are all fairly average people. There's not really hotshot gunslingers and the like in this adventure. Suddenly, midway to Arkansas City, one of the fellow passengers on the train stands up. It's a young man named Johnny Buck. He calmly walks out of the passenger car and kaboom, the entire train derails, sending the PCs hurtling across the car. The locomotive is utterly destroyed, everyone's battered and bruised, and now the PCs are stranded in the middle of a harsh desert, dozens and dozens of miles away from the nearest town, and dangerously close to Indian territory. And the saboteur, Johnny Buck, who blew up the car coupling with a vial of nitroglycerin, is screaming in agony because his hand was accidentally blown off, and now he is leaning up against a rock near the wreckage, bleeding out, screaming, and his gun pointed at anyone who comes close to him. Now you see, Johnny Buck was the junior member of the Dunker Gang, a small band of ne'er-do-wells who planned to derail the train and rob it. But strangely, the rest of the gang just doesn't seem to be around right now, and so poor Johnny is really badly wounded, betrayed, and feeling really desperate. What's worse is the PCs, as they crawl from the wreckage, hear something unnatural happening in the toppled livestock car. Seems like something is attacking the poor surviving goats. So now the players have an immediate crisis. They have a train wreck, they have a wounded outlaw, and something weird going on in the darkness of the livestock car. So there's a lot to juggle right away from the very beginning of this scenario. Okay, I'm going to stop there and explain what's going on. Like a lot of horror adventures, there's backstory here for the players to unravel over the course of the adventure. Besides poor Johnny Buck, the Dunker Gang is comprised of 4 members: the leader, Wade Dunker, his brother Charlie Dunker, and their tough friend Dogspit. And Wade and Charlie often receive help and funding from their cantankerous old uncle, Uncle Rufus. Now, Uncle Rufus and his nephew Wade Dunker did not get along. They were both bad, nasty men, and as a result, they feuded a lot. And that feud got worse when Rufus accidentally crippled his leg in an accident on his ranch, and Wade just didn't seem to care or send him any help. Uncle Rufus just hated Wade, and he realized he just couldn't really do anything about it. He was old and limping around, and Wade was off having his outlaw adventures. So Uncle Rufus just stewed and read some dark books about exotic medicines and the occult, hoping that he could find a cure for his leg or maybe even lay a curse on his nephew. But one day, an Arapaho medicine man named Hosa wandered near Rufus's ranch, a place that Rufus liked to call Fort Rufus. Rufus captured Hosa and discovered that the man was familiar with some of those old rituals Rufus had been reading about, including one called the Huuni Spider Ritual, which would, in theory, let Rufus swap bodies with Wade. Jealous of his nephew's youth and position as a gang leader, Rufus marched Hosa to a nearby abandoned mine and forced Hosa to perform the mysterious spider ritual there with him. But the ritual just didn't quite work like Rufus thought. The ritual was completed, but with unintended and dark consequences. Rufus took possession of Wade's body, but Wade's soul was forced into a horrible vulture-like bird, a soul bird. Worse, a dark trickster spirit named Huuni was summoned during the ritual and took possession of Rufus's old body. So basically, what was supposed to be a 2-way swap ended up as a 3-way swap with a dark spirit. Now, Huuni is bad news. An evil trickster spirit, he is powerful enough to spread corruption and violence from town to town. And with Huuni come his servants, the small, devilish, cannibal spirits, the Teihiihan. So when Wade Dunker, who's actually Rufus in his body, and his gang show up, ready for the train to derail, they were attacked by these Teihiihan and mostly killed or chased off before the train even arrived. So back to the action. The PCs are stranded, Johnny Buck's howling in pain by his rock, the Dunker Gang is nowhere in sight, and the Teihiihan are nearby. Now, the PCs can deal with Johnny Buck however they want. I've had people show a lot of compassion and help him, eventually win them on their side, and I've had other folks just shoot him dead without question. His survival's not really critical to the adventure, so I mostly use him to distract the PCs and scare them while something unsettling is happening with the livestock car. So maybe by the time they investigate it, they just see a glimpse of one of those shadowy short Teihiihan before it slips away. Once the players have dealt with Johnny Buck and been spooked by the goings-on in the livestock car, they're going to likely investigate the area around the train wreck. Because Johnny Buck might share with them the story about how this was an intentional train derailment for some local gang members. And nearby, the PCs will find the corpses of 2 of the Dunker gang members. They'll find Charlie Dunker, the brother of the gang leader Wade, and Dogspit, their tough henchman. Both of these men were killed brutally, and both have a map on them that shows that this was clearly the place where this heist to derail the train was going to take place. And it also shows 2 nearby locations, not that far from where the PCs are. They'll see on the map the nearby Dunker cabin, and they'll also see Fort Rufus labeled on the map. Well, with no hope to walk back to Kansas City or Arkansas City in one day, it's just too far away, the PCs are going to have to take shelter in one of these locations. Now, it doesn't matter which of these 2 places the PCs head to, they can kind of do it in any order, but I usually find that the players all want to head to the closer Dunker cabin. While en route to either place, the PCs will soon spot creepy stone and bone totems just sprouting out of the ground, territory marked as belonging to the Teihiihan. They'll also get their first glimpse of that grotesque vulture-like soul bird. It has human teeth and it croaks at them. And remember, that's poor Wade Dunker stuck inside that bird during the 3-way swap. And he's only able to barely croak something that resembles his name. And many times, poor Wade as the bird just usually gets shot and killed right here in the adventure. And the players will only realize later on that that's what they did. But that's okay, it works out that way, you'll see. Is that there ugly bird staring at me? Well, I bet I won't regret that later. At the Dunker cabin, the PCs will find it abandoned. They'll find some supplies there, which are very helpful, but more notably, they'll find some correspondences between Uncle Rufus and his nephew Wade, showing just how much they hated each other. But what's more is when nighttime sets, the Teihiihan emerge and attack the house, forcing the PCs to fight them off before they withdraw into the hills. The Teihiihan are short, clever, cruel, cannibal spirits. Imagine them as half-pint xenomorphs and you'll kind of get a good idea of how to play them. Have them crawl up under the floorboards of the cabin or sneak up through the windows and taunt them. They'll never fight the PCs straight on unless they really have the advantage. But surviving the night is the first big action piece of this adventure. Now, at Fort Rufus, the other location on the map, well, it's not really a fort. It's more like a rundown small ranch where Uncle Rufus lives. And here, the PCs will find Uncle Rufus himself. Well, the PCs will think that it's Uncle Rufus, but don't forget, it's actually Uncle Rufus's body possessed by Hwuni, the dark spirit who is obsessed with infecting mankind with cruelty and creating an army of Teihiihan cannibals to kind of take over the region. At first, Hwuni will try to impersonate Uncle Rufus, but over time the PCs will likely spot that things are not quite right. First, he doesn't walk with a limp like Wade's letters in the Dunker cabin have clearly described. And also, he doesn't really remember or talk about the things that Uncle Rufus would really know. He's obsessed about news of dark things like hangings or cruel crimes. And eventually the PC should get a little bit unnerved that this man is not quite who they think he is.
Now that boy just ain't right.
Role-playing Hwuni as Uncle Rufus is probably the most important thing you have to get right as a GM in this adventure. I like to slowly lure the PCs in by role-playing Rufus. At first, make him seem like a harmless but curmudgeonly and grumpy, cantankerous old man, but then kind of slip in, utter things that just sound wrong. Start asking about weird things, like whether one of the PCs has ever seen a man unjustly hanged, or maybe have they ever tasted horse meat recently? Or do they ever wonder what a little elbow or human meat might taste like? Not crazy enough the PCs are just going to instantly whip out a gun if they have one and shoot him dead and decide that he's got to die, but just enough to make them feel unsettled and creeped out. Although honestly, it's okay if the players do decide to attack Huuni Rufus here, because he can't die by normal means, which I'll explain in a minute. Eventually, Huuni Rufus will lock himself away at night and go to sleep. Oh, after all, he is still waking up from a long slumber as an immortal spirit, and the PCs can now snoop around his house a bit, where they'll discover evidence that Rufus, once had a prisoner here, as well as several books on the occult and dark medicines, which will clearly lay out that a ritual has taken place. And again, that night, the Teihihan will sneak up to the ranch to try to kill the PCs. And during the distraction, Huuni Rufus will try to escape, retreating back to the Black Mine where the ritual was originally performed, which is where he keeps his evil heart and is also the place where he creates his Teihihan. He'll need to create more after the PCs have undoubtedly killed a bunch of them. Now, it's possible that Huuni Rufus won't escape. This is a pretty open-ended adventure, and that's okay. Because first, if the players try to kill him as the Teihihan attack, they'll quickly discover that he's not vulnerable to normal means of physical damage. He'll just slowly reassemble and come back to life. Really, there's only a few ways to kill Huuni. First, he's vulnerable if all of his connected forms are already dead. That means the PCs have to first kill Wade Dunker, who's in the form of that creepy soul bird I'd mentioned before, and they have to kill the real Uncle Rufus, who's somewhere in Wade's body after he escaped the Teihihan attack where the train derailed. Or the PCs can reverse the ritual, which they won't know how to do just yet. Or finally, they can destroy Huuni's gruesome black heart, which is hidden away in that mine not too far from the house. Now, obviously, the players will not have access of any of those ways to kill Huuni Rufus at this point. So it's likely that he'll escape here or even get captured by the PCs. And if this happens, that's also okay because a captured Huuni will just happily toy with the PCs. He has no problem telling them about his heart that exists in that mine because he knows that that's the same area where he can create and summon new Teihihan servants. So by convincing the players to go to his mine, he's just assuming that they'll all die inside the mine long before they can get to his heart. Heading towards the mine, the PCs may also encounter the wounded Hosa, that Arapaho man that Uncle Rufus had captured, but who managed to escape during all the chaos that happened after the ritual. Speaking to the PCs in broken English, Hosa can reinforce the evil of Huuni to them and how he and his Teihihan can cause chaos and corruption in nearby towns. Hosa will also volunteer to help reverse the ritual that summoned Huuni, but he needs to do that in front of Huuni's black heart back in the Black Mine. Now, you don't have to include Hosa in this adventure if the PCs have already figured out the 3-body swap and that the mine is the source of Huuni's evil, but Hosa acts as a nice tool to kind of reinforce this to all the players because I've had different groups figure that out at different times, and it's always nice as a GM to have a tool of an NPC who can kind of come in with a little bit more exposition just in case the players need it. And if your group just doesn't seem like the violent types, then, well, Hosa can give them the third way of defeating Huuni, which is to reverse the ritual where the players can just protect him. So the adventure will inevitably reach its conclusion at the Black Mine of Teihihan. Hey, that's the title of the adventure. And this mine is a doozy. It's got many dangerous Teihihan living inside of it. Huuni's massive wagon-sized black heart is embedded in the wall deep in the cave. And Rufus Huuni is there himself, assuming he escaped from Fort Rufus. And to throw in just a little bit more complication, this is where the PCs will find Wade Dunker. Well, it's the body of Wade Dunker possessed by the real Uncle Rufus. His sanity is totally frayed. He's being chased and hunted by the Teihihan. Rufus Wade is there to get revenge on Hosa, who he thinks intentionally screwed him in the original ritual. The finale usually happens with the PCs fending off the Teihihan as they swarm from the mine, dealing with this Rufus Wade who may want to kill Hosa or he may agree to help the PCs. It's kind of up to how the PCs deal with him. They have to protect Hossa while he tries to reverse the ritual, or they can just try to kill all 3 of the spirits involved in the curse. Or I've had some groups go screw it and they just dynamite the entire mine with everybody inside, which is another fine way to end a horror adventure. Well, boys, we tried fighting them, we tried ritualizing them, but we ain't tried this. And that's the Black Mine of Teihiihan, a free adventure that you can download on oneshotadventures.com with versions available for GURPS and Call of Cthulhu, along with lots of bonus content like pre-generated characters, handouts, maps, and more. Now, like I said from the top, I've gotten notes from so many GMs who've successfully run this adventure, and I love hearing about all of those stories. And over time, I've made some modifications and included some better GM advice in this adventure and added a few bits and pieces here, some of which you heard today. And here's another few tips I want to leave you to run Black Mine of Teihiihan successfully. First, some groups need some more help understanding that 3-body swap that's going on in the adventure. While there are handouts that explain it pretty clearly, the NPC Hossa, who can also explain it, sometimes I've had Hossa actually draw it out on a piece of paper for the PCs to see. Since he speaks in broken English anyway, this is kind of a fun way to explain the concept that could otherwise be complicated. Just get out a piece of paper, draw little pictures of Rufus, Wade, and Hawuni, and show how they've all swapped bodies, and then I guarantee the players will go, oh, and now they'll realize the interesting complexity of what they'll have to deal with. I get it. I get the whole thing. Second, while the players can skip Dunker's cabin entirely, the adventure works just a little bit more smoothly if they don't, since that's where they'll really discover about the feud between Rufus and Wade. So just spend some extra time reminding the players that the desert is really harsh and force them to make some survival rolls to take damage if they overdo it and try to go straight to Fort Rufus, or remind them that the natives in the area are just really unhappy. This should get them to pick the closer Dunker cabin versus Fort Rufus. I've also gotten some feedback from some GMs that they really like to emphasize the harshness of the environment and add a few more weird events as they travel from location to location. So the adventure includes some optional events that can happen along the way, such as a worm-ridden mule or an abandoned snake oil salesman's wagon that's a little bit creepy. You can use these to either pad out the adventure if it's running short, or just to creep your players out if you just want to add a more unsettling vibe to the adventure. Finally, I find it's always best to include 1 or 2 of the NPCs who survived the train derailment to accompany the PCs on this journey. The adventure provides 2 of them, plus maybe Johnny Buck if he survived that initial encounter after getting his hand blown off. Having these NPCs with the PCs helps in 2 ways. 1, it lets you as a GM use them as red shirts when the Teihiihan first appear, killing them off brutally when the players least expect it. I love doing that. Or, should a player die horribly by the Teihiihan during the adventure, well, you can hand them one of these character sheets for these NPCs to act as replacement player characters. That's very appropriate for a horror adventure, especially for new players who might not appreciate getting killed off in the very first hour. Well, I hope those tips help. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more overviews like it and RPG reviews and GM tips, make sure you like and subscribe to this channel below. And if you've played in or run the Black Mine of Teihiihan, don't forget to tell me your tales and let me know what your experience was like. I always love learning from other people who run these adventures so I can make my next adventures even better. And especially if your adventure ended with the dynamite exploding in somehow, well, those stories are always the best and I always love them the most. Well, it worked against a mummy werewolf. Until next time, I'm JC, and just remember, if you find yourself in the body of a vulture-like soul bird, just fly off to South America and live a happy life. Just don't lurk around people who are carrying 6-shooters. It's probably not going to end up well for you.